A young man gets tangled up in a serious murder case while he is trying to save his grandmother from untimely death. What will be the end of a young man who will stop at nothing to save his grandmother's life? His desperate actions lead him down a dark path and he finds himself caught in a deadly game where every choice could mean the difference between life and death. Now, let's get into the recap. Over a radio speaker, a presenter has just finished speaking with a caller who complains about how the insecurity of Lagos is worsening and a group of thieves are tormenting Lagosians. The speaker wants that people stay safe as they cannot tell to what extent the group of thieves are harmful. The presenter then proceeds to announce that tomorrow is the gubernatorial election and people should get ready to vote for the most deserving candidate in their books. It is 11:48 p.m. and Shina is driving his grandmother to the hospital. She keeps groaning in pain and complaining of how she is in so much pain. Shina can only plead with her to relax and hang in there. As he speeds to the hospital, a policeman tries to flag him down, but he swerves and almost hits the policeman, who yells and curses at the speeding car for almost hitting him. Shina gets to the hospital and helps his grandmother inside, all the while yelling for someone to attend to him and his grandmother. Thankfully, a doctor is nearby. She has just finished talking to her babe over the phone and has promised to be with him in a bit. She has no option but to quickly drop her phone and attend to Shina's grandmother. The doctor says grandma has abdominal cramps and takes her to the operating room. She's about to operate on her when the generator goes off and almost immediately grandma starts to bleed. Shina freaks out and starts to question the doctor. Why is his grandmother bleeding? She wasn't bleeding when she came in now. What sort of hospital is this? The doctor tries to calm Shina down and asks if grandma has previously been on any medication. Shina says she takes herbs. She says the symptoms grandma is showing are symptoms of colon cancer and they need to run tests. Grandma starts to groan again. She tells Shina that it is fair for her to die like this just when Shina is starting to change for the better. She makes him promise that he would leave his old rogue ways and change for the better. She keeps repeating that there are no real friends in the world anymore and he has to be very careful. Shina and the doctor have to leave for the reception room and they are both discussing the need to carry out tests on grandma when Ugo, Shina's friend, comes in. Shina is surprised to see him and Ugo explains that he got Shina's text and immediately started running to the hospital. Just then, Ugo gets two texts and he has to excuse himself. The first text is from AY who says time is up. The second text is from Mr. Donald who asks Ugo to tell Shina to reach out to him. Ugo is still staring at the texts when the doctor tells Shina that he would be needing the sum of 4 million naira for a surgery for his grandma. She says they can only proceed with this surgery if he is able to deposit 1 million naira. As Shina and Dr. Morenike discuss behind him, Ugo calls Mr. White and asks him to pay up the money he's owing him. Mr. White snaps at Ugo over the phone and tells him he does not owe Ugo any money and that he should go to hell and never call him again. He is about to call someone else when the door slams. He turns to see Shina running out of the hospital. Ugo runs after Shina, who tells him he has to go and source for 1 million naira out of the 4 million naira the hospital billed him. He says he will go home and do a thorough search to see if grandma has any money hidden in the house. Before Shina drives away, he asks if it was his wife, Janet, that Ugo was speaking with earlier on the phone. Ugo lies and says yes. He says it isn't easy to be a family man with a pregnant wife. Shina sympathizes with him and quickly drives home to source for money. He only has 2 hours to get the money. At home, Shina turns the whole room upside down as he looks for money everywhere he can. In the wardrobe, in the bucket, in between clothes, and just everywhere else. He's lucky to find some money, but not enough for the surgery. He goes to knock on the landlord's door for help. The landlord thinks Shina has come to complain about plumbing issues, and he quickly says Shina isn't the only one facing such an issue, so he has to calm down. But Shina has come for an entirely different reason. The landlord asks of his grandmother, and he says that is exactly what he has come for. Shina explains the situation and pleads that the landlord gives him a refund of 1 year rent out of the 2 years rent that he had paid the week before. Landlord says he cannot be of help and goes into his house. Shina leaves for the hospital with the little money he has. Dr. Morenike is climbing down the stairs when she gets accosted by Dr. Bakari, who says he heard that she admitted a patient, a grandmother, without collecting money. She says her grandson will soon return with a deposit and she's not surprised that he has heard about it, especially as it is a small hospital and word travels very fast. Dr. Bakari says her good heart will run the hospital down. Doesn't she know that it isn't a free hospital or a charity organization? He threatens that if Shina doesn't return in an hour, he would have the grandmother thrown out. Dr. Morenike says he will not do such a thing. Her phone rings and as she picks up, Dr. Bakari sends his regards to her fiancé. After her fiancé, Victor, sympathizes with her on how much of a pain Dr. Bakari is to her. He tells her he's putting finishing touches to their preparation for the election holding the next day. He's the campaign manager of Mrs. Atanda. one of the gubernatorial candidates who doubles as the people's favorite. The call ends with both of them expressing their love for each other and promising to see each other the next day. Shina stops by Club Spades to pick up a customer. He calls him to tell him he's outside the club. He's still waiting for him when sounds of gunshots fill the air. People start running helter-skelter, trying to stay safe. His customer runs out injured and Shina helps him to the car amidst gunshots. The robbers catch up with them, but Shina pleads with them and they tell him and his customer, go. Shina speeds away with his customer, thanking him profusely for not leaving him behind. He starts with a small talk with Shina, who is obviously not interested. He asks about his father and Shina says he died before he was born. When his customer asks about his mother, Shina quickly switches the conversation. He asks when he'll be leaving for his flight. As he's driving, the landlord calls and asks him to send his account number. The landlord says he will loan him money, but is expected to pay back the next week. The landlord sends him 700,000 naira and Shina is overjoyed. Shina drops his customer off at his house and requests an upfront payment. While his customer goes into the house to get him something, Dr. Morenike calls him and tells him to hurry to the hospital as she can barely buy him more time. Shina panics and says he's doing all he can to raise the money. His customer sends his boy to Shina to give him a check and he immediately leaves for the hospital. At the hospital, Dr. Bakari is on the verge of throwing Mama out of the hospital, but Dr. Morenike will not allow it. She blocks the entrance to Mama's room and threatens that if Dr. Bakari touches her, that will be the last day he would use his hands for anything. Dr. Bakari has no choice but to give her and Shina a deadline of 1 more hour. Ugo, on the other hand, is seated in his car in a quiet street. He puts a call through to Shina to follow him up on his sourcing for money. Shina says he has been able to raise some money coupled with what his landlord gave him. He suddenly gets flanked by the police and has to end the call with Ugo, promising to reach out to him ASAP. A car pulls up behind Ugo's car and Ayo steps out wearing a hat. He marches towards Ugo's car and asks him if he has the money he owes his boss. Ugo fidgets and says he doesn't have the money yet, but if he's giving 20 hours, he would provide the money. Ayo orders him to step out of his car and lay on the ground. He then commands his driver to drive on Ugo. Ugo quickly yells that he has a brother that has his money and that he will lead Ayo to him. Meanwhile, Shina gets flanked by 2 policemen. One of them, who is the superior of the 2, asks if Shina recognizes him. Shina pauses and immediately recognizes him as the policeman he almost hit when he was hurriedly taking Mama to the hospital. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Mama's condition has worsened and Dr. Morenike, Dr. Bakari and Nurse Tokpe are running helter-skelter, trying to save her. Dr. Bakari says he saw something like this coming, which was why he said they should turn her out in time. He rallies around with Dr. Morenike to save her. Back to Shina and the policeman. They request for his driving license, which he provides them with. They search his boot and find nothing incriminating on him. They then say he has to find something for them before he leaves. The superior officer orders his junior to bring the POS machine so that Shina can make transfers. Shina is still explaining that he doesn't have any money on him as he needs to offset his grandmother's hospital bills. When the superior suddenly sees a tattoo on his arm, he calls him a cultist and both officers rough handle Shina. They search his car and see wands of cash, the one he managed to see in his grandmother's belongings. The policeman don't stop there. They search his phone and see a credit alert of 700,000 naira. Shina tries to explain that it is the money that his landlord borrowed him. But the policemen are not buying his story. They bundle him and say he's under arrest for the crimes he didn't commit and the ones that he will still commit. Shina will not let them take him away without a fight. He starts to fight them and beat them up. Just then, someone hits his head with the butt of a gun and he goes unconscious. Shina wakes in the cell and he can distantly hear a policeman saying he will not let Shina out of the cell because he single-handedly assaulted 2 policemen. He recalls all that has happened hours before. He took his grandmother to the hospital. He drove Mr. Donald to Grand Royal. He was accosted by policemen who he beat up and now here he is. A man wearing a hat is authoritatively insisting that the police release Shina to him. After back and forth, Shina is released to the man wearing the hat and they take him away in a car. He is taken to Chief Bankole, who launches into rambles on how he would have invited Shina to eat with him, but the invitation is not even from his heart, so he wouldn't bother. Shina is confused about why he has been brought here, as he cannot even identify any of the faces. Soon, Ugo is brought in, much to the surprise of Shina. It is then that he suspects that Ugo is the reason he was brought there. He snaps at Ugo and asks him who the men are and why he is involved in this mess. Ayo, the man in the hat, then explains that Ugo is the leader of the armed robbers terrorizing Lagos. Shina is beyond surprised. Chief Bankole then explains that nothing happens in Lagos without his approval. As a result, he told Ugo and his men that if they had to rob, they were to submit 80% of their proceeds to him. Later, he told Ugo and his men to cease all robbery operations. And what did Ugo and his men do? They went ahead to rob and failed to deliver the agreed proceeds. Chief Bankole says Ugo said Shina was also involved in his activities and he was going to pay his debt on his behalf. Shina flares up and declines being a part of Ugo's boys. He says he had no no idea that Ugo was into robbery. He snaps at Ugo and asks why he would think he would use his grandmother's hospital bills to fix his mess. Shina then tells Chief Bankole that he has nothing to do with Ugo. Chief Bankole says the money they even found on him cannot pay Ugo's debts, and so Shina can live in peace. He will have to deal with all of Ugo's family members to the last. Shina thanks the chief, picks his nylon of cash and starts to leave. He, however, changes his mind and goes back and meets Chief. Shina begs Chief not to harm any of Ugo's family members, but allow Ugo pay for his sins by himself. Chief says nobody tells him what to do. He then faces Ayo and tells him to get ready to go on an errand. On hearing this, Shina offers to go on the errand for him. Chief first says the errand doesn't concern him. Shina makes a bargain with the chief that if he delivers the errand successfully, that he will not only spare lives of Ugo's wife and unborn children, but also pay the bills of his grandmother. Chief agrees and Shina insists that he pays the bills already. Chief says he has to successfully deliver the errand first before he fulfills any of his promises. Chief then instructs that one of his women chop two of Ugo's fingers off. Shina has to watch as Ugo's fingers are cut off. He can barely stand the sight of blood. Ayo offers Shina a drink, which he rudely declines. Ayo laughs scornfully and says they should name Shina Shekbe. He asks Shina to go in front of him while he comes. Chief and Ayo have a quick talk. He asks Ayo if he saw the tattoo on Shina's arm. Chief says Shina was a saint, a member of a cult, and that if he is still a member of the cult, he would have known him. Ayo then says no member of the saint leaves without a price. Chief asks Ugo what price Shina paid, and he says he paid with his mother. Chief laughs and asks Ayo to go ahead with his task. Shina drives Ayo to a large house, and when he's asked to stop driving and wait, he asks what the errand they are going to deliver is. Ayo doesn't respond. Instead, he asks Shina to wait for him while he goes into the house. He looks at the picture of his ex-girlfriend and repeatedly asks what he has done to deserve all he's going through. While he's gone, Shina sees a gun at the back seat and he starts to panic and asks what he has gotten himself into. He's still panicking when a man runs out of the house towards the car. He pleads with Shina to open the door as Ayo is trying to kill him. Just then, Ayo comes out and shoots him. He falls to the ground, staining Shina's window with blood. Ayo hurries into the car and orders Shina to drive away as they can hear the siren of a police van in the distance. Shina says he cannot drive anything. He's crying and shaking badly, asking Ayo why he killed somebody. Ayo says he has just witnessed the murder of one person and may have to witness the murder of another person, his grandmother, if he doesn't drive away that instant. Still shaking, he kicks the engine of the car to life and speeds off. When they get back to their destination, Ayo leaves him in the car. Shina is still crying, asking himself what he has gotten into. When he gets a call from the hospital that someone has cleared his grandmother's hospital bills, he should head over to the hospital because he would be the first person she would want to see when she wakes. He thanks the doctor, ends the call, and spends some time crying before he heads to the hospital. The next morning, Mama wakes up fine. Dr. Morinike is trying to wake Shina, who is hallucinating about all that has happened in the past hours. He wakes with a start, and she asks if he had a nightmare. He lies that he's fine. She asks what happened to his head, and when Grandma asks him to, he lies that he fell and sustained injuries. She then proceeds to ask him where he got the money for the surgery from. He lies that the government provided him with the money through an elderly initiative program. Dr. Morinike knows that this is a lie, but does not say anything. Grandma says everything is a plan to make them vote the old cargoes in again, and Dr. Morinike laughs and says she will leave them to themselves now. Before she leaves, there is a news on TV that one of the gubernatorial candidates, Mrs. Atanda, and her campaign manager, Victor Osarentin, were murdered. Dr. Morinike is stunned at the cup of tea in her hands falls off. She runs out just as Nostope runs in. Shina asks her what is going on, and she says Victor was Dr. Morinike's fiancé. Shina is heartbroken and runs to the toilet. Dr. Morinike goes into her office and is trying to pack her bags to leave. She falls to the floor in tears, hugging a picture of herself and Victor and pleading with him not to leave her. Shina is crying when Chief Bankole calls him, saying they have more to do together. He says he's convinced fate brought them together, especially on seeing that he still has the mark of a saint on his hand. He asks Shina to think about his offer properly, but Shina says he has nothing to think about as he's done with them. He's trying to wash off his tattoo when Ugo comes in. Ugo says Mama told him he would find Shina in the hospital. He then tells him that of all the gang members, he was the only one spared by Chief Bankole as others were buried alive. Shina gets angry and says he was selfish and wicked to have become an armed robber without thinking about the effect it would have on his family. He asks Ugo to stay away from him and angrily returns to Mama's hospital room. He is surprised to see Ronke, his ex-girlfriend, in the room. Mama quickly says she was the one who asked her to come visit her. She says Ronke has begun work at a bank. Ronke quickly says it is nothing much, as she only took up the role of a cashier. Shina calls it baby steps, since she has always wanted to work in a bank. Ronke soon has to leave, and she bids Mama and Shina goodbye. Mama whispers to Shina to see her off, and after initial reluctance, she sees her off. Shina says it is good to see her. Ronke says he should have called her, as she would have been able to help. She says she understands that things are not the same between them anymore, as they broke up in uni. Shina explains that as a member of a cult, he didn't want the cult group to kill her, which was why he broke up with her. Ronke says she understands, and that now that they are out of university and he's no longer a cultist, could they go back to how things were? Shina explains that although he would have loved to, so many things are going on in his life at the moment that he cannot explain. He says he would keep in touch with her, and he leaves the hospital. Shina goes home and meets his neighbor outside, listening to the radio. Over the radio, the presenter calls out a number for anyone with sufficient information about the death of Mrs. Atanda to call. Shina thinks deliberately on whether or not to call. He has to leave to drive his regular customer, Mr. Donald, somewhere. As he drives, the car radio blasts with news about the recent murder. He turns the radio off on the request of Mr. Donald, who soon drops off at his destination. Shina cannot stop feeling guilty about the death of Victor and Mrs. Atanda. He decides to put a call through to the police to confess that Chief Bamidele Bankole is the one behind the murder. The police send one of their agents to meet Shina where he is. The agent arrives and says he has to take Shina to a safe house to protect him from whosoever might be seeking to kill him because of his confession. On the way, the agent steps out of the car to ease himself. They are about to resume the journey when an announcement comes up over the radio that Mrs. Atanda is alive. Shina is happy and says it is good news. The agent nods his head that it is indeed a good news and addresses him as Shekbe. Shina is surprised. It is only Chief Bankole's boys that call him that name. It is then that it dawns on him that the supposed agent is one of Chief Bankole's boys. With a gun to Shina's head, the agent orders him to step out of the car and say his last prayer. Thankfully, a group of guys are standing not too far off. They see what is happening and come to Shina's rescue. The agent is about to shoot Shina when someone suddenly hits him, making him unconscious. Shina turns and is surprised to see that it's Ugo. Ugo says it is his way of pushing back and thanking Shina for saving his life. The agent gains consciousness and is about to pick his gun to shoot Shina when the group of guys standing nearby arrive. One of them steps on the gun, stopping him from shooting. Chief Bamidele and his boys are arrested, and Mrs. Atanda thanks the public for their support and unity. Shina goes home while Dr. Morenike mourns the death of her fiancé.